For exercise 10-6, we were required to draw the front and right side view of the object shown in the exercise, and we need to add the following dimensions and tolerances to our part. So what I've got here is I've got my front view and I've got my right side view with all the information necessary for those two particular views. So at this point I can go ahead and switch over to my layout tab. I'm going to go to my viewport dialog box, and we're going to go MV enter to create my viewport. And then I'll select on the viewport and change the scale to 1:1. Hit escape to clear that selection, and then switch over to my dimension layer. And I'm just going to start I'm going to take this one, kind of one step at a time. The first thing that I need to do is I need to add the dimensions for this particular object. So we're going to go ahead and just start with our basic linear dimensions like we normally do. I've got a dimension right here of 30. I've got my overall dimension here of 95. The dimension from here to the center of this is 15. And then we've got 15 on this side as well. The overall width for this particular object is 50. The distance of these slots is 10 and 10. And then we've got some hole diameters that we need to account for. Now, the one thing about this particular drawing that I'm not too keen on, it tells me to draw the front and the right side view of this. But in drawing the front and right side view, what we actually leave out is the whole diameter. We don't have any place where we can actually accurately see where the hole actually is for this particular object. So because of that, I would need to dimension to a hidden feature, and that's kind of one of the rules that we want to try to avoid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my model tab, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw a rectangle and put in that top view, just because I think it's necessary for dimensioning the overall part. Now I'm still on my dimension layer, so I want to change that to 0 and then change my current layer to 0 so that I can actually go ahead and draw this thing. So this comes in 10 and goes back 30. I need to make sure my polar was turned on, so this is going to come back 30. And then if the overall width is 50, then this is going to be 30 here as well. And we'll just bring that right out to here and then trim out this piece here. And now I can locate the center of my 30 diameter hole. So we'll go to the circle command and we'll track this in 25 and then do our diameter of 30. And then I can draw my hidden lines for the hole that goes through this direction. And then I'm just going to trim out the lines that I don't need in here. Erase these two lines, and then I'm going to use my match properties, grab a hidden line, and bring those over. I'll then use the center mark command to locate my center point, and then I'm just going to use the line command to draw in a center line for these two holes, and then I'll select on all of those objects and move those to my center line layer. Now, once I have all that, that is everything that I need for the top view for this particular part. So I'm going to go back to my layout. Now, if you look, that's pretty close to the top. So what I need to do, don't move them in model space. Double click into the viewport and pan down. Notice that moves all of my stuff. I have no information here that I can still use. So rather than doing it that way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink the bottom of this viewport, and then I'm going to move everything on my screen, which is just the viewport and the few dimensions that I've created, and I'm going to move that down, and then I'm going to make the top of my viewport a little bit longer. It's important that you never pan or move or anything in the model space after you start placing dimensions, because if you do, then you're going to really lose everything that you have. So at this point, I can go ahead and finish my dimensioning. So we've got diameter of 20, and I need to go back to my dimension layer, and then we'll put this on the dimension layer. And then I also have over here my diameter dimension of 30. Now, this doesn't say 2 holes, but just to make it a little bit clearer, I'm going to come in here and click on this dimension, and we'll go to my primary units area. And for my dimension suffix, I'm just going to put in parentheses 2 places. That way there's never any question as to where those are located. I can now go back into my dimension command, and I want to locate that this is 25 from here and 25 from here. Now, just about all the rest of the stuff is dimensioned in other views on this particular drawing, so I don't need to go through and create, any other types of dimensions. I just want to verify real quick that all the dimensions that are necessary are here. I'm locating both holes with the diameter of both holes. I do not have the depth of the slot, so that is one thing that I will need to put into this view. So we'll just do a linear dimension from here to here, which is going to be my 30. So that's all the dimensions that I now need. I've got everything in, and now I can begin to apply my datums and different things like that. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to put a datum identifier on this bottom surface. So I'm going to go LE enter into the leader command, hit my down arrow and go to settings, change my leader and line type to my datum filled triangle. For annotation, we're just going to have M text, and then I'm going to draw a line, my extension line down and over just a little bit, and then type in A to label that surface as my datum A. Item B says to assign a perpendicularity tolerance of 0.4 to both sides of the slot relative to datum A. So this is going to be over here. So again, we're going to use the leader command, hit the down arrow and go to settings. I want to change my leader type back to my closed filled, go back to my annotation and select tolerance. And now I'll go ahead and say OK, and I'll pick my first extension line. And I'm going to draw this over here because I actually want to use the same feature control frame to call out both edges. So once I locate this, I need to put in the perpendicularity symbol and my tolerance value of 0.4, and that's going to be relative to datum A. Once I have that, I can say OK, and that's going to put that in, and I can go right back into my quick leader command, and I can select this surface and just come up here and select that endpoint, enter, and OK. So that's going to give me that perpendicularity call out for both of those. The next thing I need to do is assign a perpendicularity tolerance of 0.2 to the center line of the 30 diameter hole center line at maximum material condition relative to datum A. So for our diameter 30 hole, which is this one right here, I can do this on the center line here, even though it's a hidden feature, but I can draw this in, and we'll go ahead and put in the perpendicularity tolerance. And since it's to the center line, I need the diameter, and this is going to be 0.2 at maximum material condition relative to datum A. And I'll go ahead and say OK to that, and that puts in that tolerance. So now I need a feature tolerance of plus or minus 0.8 to all 3 holes. So I'll click on this and scroll down to my tolerances. In this case, it's going to be symmetrical, and my deviation for all of these is 0.8. So once I have that in, I'm going to go ahead and use match properties, click on this, and click on this. Now that got rid of my 2 places, so I do want to go through and make sure that I put back in that suffix for 2 places. Now, if we notice, because I put it in the suffix and there's a tolerance, it puts it twice. So rather than using the dialog box to put that in, I am going to first kind of shrink this text back over a little bit, and then I'm just going to double click it to bring up the M text editor, and then I'm going to use the M text editor to put it in the two places. And then I can close my text editor. This is going to give me a little bit cleaner of a look than the other method. So the next one that we have is a parallelism tolerance of 0.2 to the common center line between the two 20 diameter holes relative to datum A, which is this center line right here. So what I need to do for this particular one is I need to use the parallelism tolerance. So we'll go back into my leader command, locate my leader right here. And for my symbol, I'm going to select the parallelism symbol. And it's going to be a 0.2 relative to datum A. I have that in, I can just select OK, and that puts in that tolerance. Now the last thing that this is telling me is to assign a tolerance of plus or minus 0.5 to all linear dimensions. Now there's two different ways I can do this. I can actually add the plus or minus 0.5 to each and every single one of the dimensions, or I can put a note on the drawing that says all linear dimensions have a tolerance of plus or minus 0.5 unless otherwise stated. And in this case, since they're all the same, it really doesn't matter which one I do. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this 25, and we'll select symmetrical for the tolerance. And for the deviation, it's just going to be 0.5. Once I have that one done, I can just go to match properties and select it, and then I can just select all the rest of the dimensions to give them all that same plus or minus 0.5. Okay, so that's all of the dimensions that are necessary. So there's how we do steps A through F for exercise 10-6. Now, like I said, the only really deviations that I made from the book was the book says to draw the front and the right side view of the object shown in the figure. But for this particular instance, the top view is a really important view. So adding that one little requirement, you can see that we've got plenty of callouts, plenty of details, and plenty of information on each of the three views that we have here. Typically, a view is only omitted if it doesn't have any information that adds to the overall understanding of the drawing. But in this case, the top view, I believe, is completely necessary. So for this one here, go ahead and add that top view and then apply your dimensions and tolerances.